Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is actually the 64th 75K tutorial, and this one was requested by a person, TJ's Higher, and it's a Skrillex sound, and this is the sound. This is what I got. The main sound is actually not that difficult. It's just this particular... I have a lot of ideas about how that was done, but none of the ones I tried worked. And it bugs me. It makes me think a lot about what I'm looking at here. It makes me think that there's actually a layered sound in there. And it's mostly because this sound doesn't really come up a lot in this track. Like variations of it do, like when it goes higher and then we have another one of those here. Like it makes me actually think that there's a layered sound on there. But again, part of how it behaves, like with the high pass coming on here, I thought stuff like maybe it was the frequency shifter from Massive, maybe it's a particular warp mode from Serum or something. Maybe it's actually one of the thoughts I had was that maybe it was a rendered sample that got pitch shifted because it sort of looks like it's being pitch shifted because of the way that the filter follows it. It could just be a filter doing it. It could be like a low pass filter just following and then going down like that, and that could be just the way it sounds. I tested the sample theory by putting on a gross beat on here just to see what it sounded like when it went down like that. But not only that, but it also loses the sharpness. Now losing the sharpness isn't that difficult because we can use a lot, like the particular method that I decided to use it, because we're losing the sharpness, but we also sort of gain squelch. And that has a lot of ways that could have happened. But the way that I initially tried to do it was that, because I'm doing this with ring modulation, so I thought, okay, well, I'll just lessen the ring modulation on it, because like on the main sound, it's just that like when you do that, it's not particularly squelchy beneath that, unless you made a sound beneath it that just was squelchy, that when it revealed it, that it would be more squelchy. It's just that like I couldn't get this tone without using a very particular thing that I'm using to do it with. And then my option was to actually FM the ring modulation itself, which is what this is. This actually brings on the ring modulation, FM rather, which is sort of squelchy sometimes. I actually have it on an octave lower because this is not bass level. Bass level is down here. That's actually regular bass level down there. That's not even lower bass level. Like, that's normal bass level, and then beneath that's lower than bass level. Actually, kind of weird. A lot of my problems with getting this kind of tonally similar was because I was spending so much time trying to play it at bass level without realizing, oh, it's actually higher than that. But and then also just so that you hear what it sounds like when it's higher pitched. Granted, the automation is still like identical. It's like if you were going to do that, you probably want to also raise the high passing. And that kind of shenanigans. So there's a lot of kind of strange things to accommodate for just, I don't know how that particular part happened. I'm leaning more towards the idea that it was a layered sound, just because that'd be simpler. Whether or not that's actually what happened, we may never know. But the main dig was actually pretty okay. So what's happening here is that I took this saw wave, which you might be thinking, that's not a saw wave, but it was a saw wave. Because as it happens, if you go make a saw wave, and then you can convert it to sine harmonics, where we recreated the saw wave additively. And now that we've done this, we can randomize the phases of each individual harmonic, so that each harmonic starts at a different phase. Even though it's still harmonically a saw wave, it is now the shape is no longer a saw. What that gets us is this kind of messed up saw versus, a sharper saw. It's slightly different every time, but it's more or less the same deal. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to create this sort of the smoothest possible, like, cloudy platform to build on. And also the reason why we're hearing that, and it sounds like it's being EQ'd there, I still have the reverb on there. I just said lol out loud. I'm actually using the front page EQ on this thing, because I was actually trying really hard to make this just inside one citrus. And I'm more or less there. There's nothing in post on here. I tried some stuff in post, but I'm just going to keep this the way this is. God, that's really just not very cool. It's not even close to what that was like. I just had kind of, there's just so many different, like, almost ways I could think to do that, but like none of the ones worked. It's weird. I mean, given that I just made this inside entirely once, I'm probably didn't do enough work on it, but that's a bit of a logical fallacy to assume that because you can't do something, it's because it's more complicated. Anyway, so ring modulated by this guy. So this guy, if you take a sort of a regular sine wave, you can use this button up here. Now, what this is doing is that in ring modulation world, there's a difference between ring modulation and amplitude modulation. Ring modulation as a process is the same thing as frequency modulation, only we're doing it to volume instead of pitch. So you can think of it as kind of a really fast volume LFO. The difference between ring modulation and FM in terms of how it actually does its job is that it's not, in terms of FM, it isn't literally an LFO, but with RM, it actually just is. The shape determines precisely what happens. You don't have to worry about any kind of change in slope or whatever to determine what the actual motion is. So to that end, the difference between ring modulation and amplitude modulation is that ring modulation is a bipolar action, whereas amplitude modulation is not. So if you look at just a regular sine wave, you can see that it's a bipolar thing. It goes up positive and it goes down negative through the zero crossing here where there is no amplitude. And if we did this is saying that it's only positive, and that more or less, well, rather, the reason why this is important is because it goes up positive and down negative, but we don't really hear it being positive and negative. We just hear it as being the same thing twice. So really, per one oscillation, it's happening twice, which means that it's more or less one octave higher. More or less, not entirely exactly precisely. So to solve this, we're just going to do that, which turns it saying it's only positive, and it stretches that one first half to be the one whole oscillation. So now we have one thing per one period, which is important given that we're playing essentially the same note as the output sounds. We want that to be kind of there to get this particular result. However, this particular shape wouldn't be sharp enough. So what we did is we used attention here to really hammer it in there, and then we get this. And then there's the skew also kind of brought to the side. Did I really leave this on? Yes, I did. So that's the half and even. So this makes it even. So this is saying, okay, it's got the only positive, but now it's bringing that first time to be just the regular first oscillation, first half of the oscillation rather, and it's in that same size. So then the rest of the other half is silence. This is super important because this is exactly what's causing the ultra sharpness in the sound, which again we can actually sort of see what's happening in the result here. So it's a little uneven, but you can think of like this to here as being kind of like a single oscillation. The light that we're looking at is not perfectly representing what we're actually seeing, but essentially what's happening is that there's a half of this is on and then the other half is off. So we have half the waveform on and the other half off, and that creates this really, really sharp feeling. We went even farther with that in kind of the real result to really kind of just make it super duper sharp. And it's over there and not over here the way that we had it, because I moved the phase right over here. I just moved it around until it sounded sharper, because certain positions work better than others. However, you can see that this guy is actually a different pitch, and this different pitch is what's causing the motion in the sound. This pitch means essentially that this is kind of like traveling. If I were to play against this sound, instead of it being statically just staying in that particular position inside the period, it actually kind of scans around the waveform. So it actually illuminates different kinds of harmonic presence in the waveform and creates motion. Because if it was just static, so that gets us motion. Indeed. So now we are using FM anyway. That I am FMing using the number 2 here is actually a super kind of a joke, because it was a mistake. I actually intended to modulate this by a sine wave, and then I accidentally, because the ring modulation tab is a different tab from the FM tab, so I just see this as not being active. I'm like, oh, it's an active oscillator. I just take the first active oscillator. Oh wait, the same oscillator is actually still ring modulating. So you can have one oscillator do FM and RM, but they're both doing it at the same time. So whatever changes you make are going to be done to both the RM and the FM. However, am I modulating this? No, I'm not. So I'm not actually modulating that. This is just on to create a sort of additional texture. But this is also being FM, remember. So this guy's modulation input is being controlled by mod X, which is coming out only over here. And then mod Y is controlling something else entirely. Is it controlling this guy's volume? It is. So this guy is being modulated and it's controlling the volume. Now this is actually the reason this is even possible inside Citrus is because of what I consider to be a bug. In FM world, when you want to change the intensity of the FM, you alter the volume of the modulating oscillator, which is what we're doing. We're altering the volume of the modulating oscillator. However, for some reason, Citrus completely ignores that when you use RM. So if I had RM'd it by this and I changed the volume of this oscillator, it wouldn't care at all that you're doing that. It only cares when you modulate the mod input. So the oscillator that's being modulated in Citrus can also accept this particular parameter, which tells it how much of the FM is being put in total, the total input of the FM, and also RM. It's essentially total modulation input. So it's a global change on just this one oscillator. This is the one that's going out. It's essentially all modulation. So if I wanted to modulate FM, this is what I would modulate. But I don't want to, and I just wanted to modulate FM. So, and because I'm using the same oscillator, like if this did happen, that it actually worked the way it's supposed to, where our RM is being modulated by volume, then I could just use a separate oscillator because I'm not using that many oscillators. But hilariously, I'm able to use the same oscillator here because of essentially a bug, where RM does not get changed unless you use the mod input instead of altering the volume itself. It's kind of funny. All of this shedanery, which sounds like this by itself, by the way, without the global EQ. So we have essentially, this is what the FM mist would sound like. There's our naked screwed up saw wave. There's it being FM by this guy. And then here it is being remodulated. And then it goes into filter 1 where it gets high passed, and then high pass, which is almost there, and then distorted. And then the whole of it gets EQ'd up on top. The secondary FM thing can actually sound pretty cool when you use it in specific places, because this is the high pass control, and then this is that main FM coming from the same RM oscillator, and it does alter the tone like a little bit, but then like this guy coming in, like you can do cool stuff with it. It's just that it's not doing the right kind of cool stuff, which was bugging me about it. But like 80% of the rest of this tone is identical to what's happening right here. So like I'm kind of okay with this. This whole thing could actually be done the way that we described it with Serum. If you look at the warp modes, you see that there's RM and AM from different oscillators, and you can just do essentially this thing. You can just make a shape that is that thin, and then RM a busy oscillator, and you got more or less the same thing. It's actually one of the things. You actually, come to think of it, you can do everything that I did in Citrus inside Serum, because Serum also allows you to put it up in the bins, as they call it. Just do this, and then I believe there's a thing that randomizes phases. Where is that? Oh, is it just up here? You can randomize all your phases. Is this phase or is this all? That's all. That's not what I wanted to do. Ah! Come on. Do I have to do this down here? Yeah. So you can randomize phase, and then you can ring modulate or amplitude modulate. AM is probably what you want from B. Then you can come into B, make a I guess just do one of these, and then you can move around the phase. You would want the randomness to not be random, so that you can specifically choose which phase you want. You maybe want this to be random, and then you could also just detune this by a tiny amount to get the motion that we talked about before. And then as you have, it'd be a bit difficult to sort of, actually I lied. You can do FM from sub here to do the kind of weirdness that we were doing with the secondary FM that we were talking about before. And then unfortunately you aren't able to dual FM this other thing over here, but that's honestly just a kind of a minor tonal influence. And then high pass it. and then distort it, and then it's literally the same chain that's happening here. So while I prefer the citrus like version of it just because I have a bit more of a command on it, this is totally possible to do inside Serum. It's kind of fun. Anyway, I'll give you this FLP. There's my massive try over there. To download in the description of this video. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. If you want to make a request for yourself, unfortunately you can't because the method to do so got closed, which means nobody can comment on it anymore, and it's not worth it to set up a whole new one just for the last 15 of these. Last 10 of these. We're actually almost done. Holy shit. I might get done with this before 100K. How cool would that be? But yeah, I really hope I don't hit 100K when I am in Holland. It'd be kind of hard for me to coordinate things. But yeah. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as usual, have a nice day.